Hey everybody, Honest Sarcastic here with the Hyperloops. Cuenca wrote or did a poll a while ago. People wanted to talk about like deck lists and they want to hear more about stuff. So trying to kind of deep dive, or I guess it's not super deep, but kind of go more. Damn, I can't even think of the word right now. I guess meme territory in my mind, but it's just kind of like in line with Star Wars. We're gonna build a Jango Boba deck today and see where we get. So let's just go straight to that. And what we're going to talk about first, I guess, is just kind of looking at the available options. And I'm going to apologize in advance the fact that I don't have dark mode enabled on my Chrome. I meant to do it, and I just kind of forgot. Uh, but looking at Django, we have the 1-2-1, we have double resource side. So, like, there's some weird stuff here because equipment wise, he can put a bunch of stuff on. He'll get a resource off of that. His die sides are most likely going to try to get resource or very, very little damage. So, like, the one you're normally probably seeing is, Jango, Boba, and they're running this Boba with bounties. It's like, oh, I got two sides, right? But then you have like a one, and you have 2 points left to um, run like double down. You have two, or any means necessary. But we're actually gonna go away from that. So let's just pop that up real quick, because what I'm gonna do instead is we're gonna go with OG Boba. Uh, so here's the rationale, and I'm sorry that actually I guess I can pop this up at the same. No, I can't pop it up at the same time. The rationale is that we still have the two sides, right? And if we look at it, we do lose one of the range sides as far as like pairing with modifieds. So we do have to keep track of that. But we maintain two to disrupt resource on both sets of dice. Now the difference now is we're looking at a difference in the ability and this special. So this Boba Fett has where if there's bounties and you successfully defeat the character, you can like re-roll his dice back in equal to the number of bounties on it, or the upgrades. But my main concern is that the one damage side is really just something we would probably re-roll very often, and I'd like to kind of avoid that when possible. Um, Whereas our special here is going to be kind of based on what the opponent has and what we have. So if an opponent has those big damage sides, or let's say you play against like a Lando that has a 4 for 2, you can get lots of additional damage from there, and it kind of concerns the opponent. You play against like a Palpatine, um, who has like the threes, and then maybe if they're playing the 5 cost upgrade, have some fours on it. So there's kind of different things going around, but the base expectation here is with 3 sets of 2, you'll feel much better about not necessarily re-rolling this die. And kind of the less re-rolls we have to do, the better off we'll probably be. And maybe people will go for him. The other thing is that because we're going to be kind of equipment based to start, I want to give up the least amount of slots possible to pretty much terrible cards. So like outside of Dead or Alive, the bounties are not amazing. So I really just kind of don't want to run them to try to get benefit off of a Boba when I do damage, and like, is it worth it? I'd rather just have access to this special here, because if we have anything with big sides itself, 3 indirects, the +4 on a gauntlet rockets, this special now looks insane because we can be getting 4 direct damage off of it, which would be bananas. So that's the base idea. We're going to go with that, and we'll pick cards based on that. As you can see, I just have the standard holocron up. Um, so, why do you hate me so much, Boba? So let's put him in as a 2 of. So now we're exactly at 30. We don't have to worry about plots. We don't have to worry about any of the other shit. We do have to figure out what battlefield we want at some point, but for now we can just kind of push forward with this. We're also only going to be yellow and neutral, so that's kind of easy in that regard. So first thing we're going to do is obviously look at equipment, because we decided to build a deck around the characters essentially. So when we decided the lineup, it's like, okay, Boba just wants kind of some big sides for the special, but you're not guaranteed to hit the special, so you just kind of take, play it by ear. But Jango, on the other hand, does want the equipments. So you have to look actively at the equipments and kind of decide what's the what's the best way to go with it? So both of them are bounty hunters, because I don't think they'd fuck up and leave that out. So we definitely want 2 gauntlet rockets. If we get the resource, we can just gauntlet on Jango and like be good to go. You can't really start off with the gauntlet, but you could start off with something small, get a resource, and then overwrite with the gauntlet. The only concern is that if you do something like that, then you will lose access to the 2-for-1 on Jango's die, which is a relatively large concern. But we'll play it by ear. The Gauntlet Rocket also, because it's 2/3 +4 and 2 disrupt, it has a lot of big sides. If we can ever nail that +4, it doesn't matter whether we get the 1 or the 2 with it. Like it's a hefty amount of damage. So from here is where the kind of tough decision goes. Where do we want stuff? I'm gonna put a bounty hunter mask and an armor plating. So here's the base theory. The bounty hunter mask probably only goes on Jango, right? It'll just give us straight up +1 resource. So in that regard, it's like, okay, I use the card to gain a health and a resource. That seems great. The armor plating is a bit weirder because we'll pay the resource and kind of get the resource back, and we save 2. But why would I pay 1 resource for 1 health, essentially? It just kind of doesn't make realistic sense in comparison to a bounty hunter mask. In the situation where, let's say, Jango's dead and we have a Boba Fett, then we are kind of screwing ourselves with bounty hunter masks because, let's say we put on 2 upgrades, we can't go and play multiple bounty hunter masks. If we play a bounty hunter mask, like, we can't play a 3rd upgrade, whereas the armor plating could save the health and then like go away, and we'd probably be okay with that. So micro binoculars is kind of funny. I think Mandalorian Van Braces is probably one of the better upgrades available. The rationale here is that you're gonna, if our equipment accounts aren't so crazy that we're like seeing 2 per round, if we play a Mandalorian Van Braces, we still situate ourselves to do other stuff, and if we're getting lots of additional time over the course of a game, just overall the value sides will get there. Resource and disrupt are the big value sides on this, because if you consider it that you paid a resource for Van Braces and you disrupt your opponent, you've traded off there. You paid a resource to get this die, and this die took a resource from the opponent, so it's a fair trade. Like, there's other things to take into consideration with like time and whatnot, but that's fine. If Van Braces comes down, it gets you a resource, it paid for itself. We know that Jango's ability will help pay for this, but like that works with any of the equipment. So like once we bounty hunter mask, if we play a Mandalorian Van Braces, like it's not like we got the extra benefit there. Even discarding at that point doesn't feel terrible. So like I just think you can pretty much take whatever side you get from this and feel fine. And obviously ignoring stuff like I took a shield and I'm playing against fucking Mill. So I think Van Braces there's a pretty easy decision. I don't see myself doing any of this protective suit shit. If there were a lot of bounty heat decks in the format, then I could, consider. Or actually, this is not even bounty. This is for other shit. Yeah. So, like, I guess if people were playing a bunch of mind extractions and I was concerned about that coming on Jango, I could play protective suits. Magna Glove is a feasible control one. That's actually kind of hilarious as a control one, because if you're trying to keep people off resources, it does have two disrupt sides. If we play it first thing, then we'll still have a resource left, and it could try to get the resource to pay for itself. It's a 2 disrupt. It's in a very good control spot. The dilemma ends up being is if you do it and then an opponent spends their resources, like, what do you do after? You hold them hostage for the rest, but like it's still brutal. Regular Mandalorian Jetpack is another weird ass one, because you get the reroll and like just the overall benefit you get isn't largely amazing. It feels. I think Z6 Jetpack's probably fine. I'm not a big fan of the 2-for-1, but we are looking at essentially 2 indirect for the first resolution, which gets bigger over time. 2 ranged. The 2-for-1 being poop is fine. Disrupt shield, and it goes with Jango. So if we do start off with that, then we get a resource back, and we're not like hamstringing ourselves. So I think I'm okay with that. So I'd say I'd probably want 10 equipment, maybe. I don't think I want additional jetpack stuff. I could consider playing the wrist laser and then just kind of throwing it away. Um, but the using a card to get like one ranged is shitty. So like I might just play the health route with this instead. If I felt like I really wanted to just overwrite whatever the die was, I think I'd go with that. If we were running like Theed, I'd be fine with a Fetris laser, because then like we just do it, we roll out, we eat it, and then we do whatever the hell we wanted. I'll put one there for now, but that's probably coming back out. And we're with equipment, so we don't really get the quick draw holster much here. The binocular's kind of funny. It works with actual Jango's resource sides, but those blanks are ugly. It would give us additional ones, though. Free rerolls could be good. So I think I would just set myself up here and go like this. So the base rationale is we still have 10. And we may get to a point where we're just trying to set up Jango to go wide and then run the stupid 2-cost card that could like heal 5 if you have 5 upgrades. So then Bounty Hunter Mass is pulling double duty there. Because you play it, you get to the 3rd resource, which was sweet. And then it sets up some of our other plays. So if we go to the supports... Actually, hold on. I lied. So we do need to see if there's any other upgrades just kind of worth running. Pike Blaster, not particularly good enough. Neither Skill Tracker. Underhanded so-so. A lot of these are just not amazing. We don't have indirect on a single... Actually, I guess there's the Z6 Jetpack has indirect. I was going to say, we don't have indirect on like any of the sides, so it's kind of tough to run like a Dunderbuss and then have like just weaker sides there. It also doesn't work at all with our base concept of... My God, my brain is not working right now. Like we want to stay away from modified sides if we can, so that it doesn't make our rerolling as atrocious. NP's Electro Ripper is pretty good from a damage perspective. Hidden Blaster could be great, but once again, it's a double modified side. It's brutal. The fact that we don't get resources back from like any of those is the main concern. These are pretty awful cards. Shit's real. Pulse Cannon's the one that's like easy decision for me. It does a lot, ridiculous amount of damage, and it puts an opponent... It forces an opponent to be like, oh, I have to answer that. Sonic Detonator's another one that could be like that big thing that annoys the shit out of people. But you could use it a couple times and throw it away. 2 Disrupt, 2 Discard are very, very brutal. So we got 2 4 for an indirect. Discard resource, 4 for 1. Those are some hefty damage sides. The pay is a little brutal. We could go Cutlass. What's the difference here between Cutlass besides the redeploy and Wrist Rocket? So it'd be 2 4 for 1. 4 indirect for 1 versus what? 2 3 4 2 Disrupt, 2 Discard. I mean 2 Disrupt, 2 Shield. The override on this, I think, might be a little too brutal. We're going to put 1, but we'll probably come back and cut that. I just don't want to forget about it. The other stuff I'm not really amazed by. Like I said, we do want to stay away from modified sides if we can. But Pulse Cannon's like that big one that's easy, and we do have the Gauntlet Rocket. So one second, let's just go to the bottom, because I already know that I'm adding slave ones. So this slave one is quite ridiculous here with the way we're setting up with Bounty Hunter Mask. We could bounty hunter mask to get the resource, then be at 3, and then slave 1. And now each of our piloted activations are going to do 1 damage with it. Plus, it has its own die, which is just overall super useful. Meaning that this is quite ridiculous. And if we can start the game with it, we'll be in a really strong position. All right. So we do have a lot of upgrades, and we don't want to go super heavy on supports, but I'm just taking a peek at these just in case any of them stand out. We don't have access to focus, so things like entourage are not very good. Same applies to a lot of these. I could see myself potentially running an assassin droid just because it does the poking, and being able to kind of poke like that can be very good. Smuggling ring unfortunately takes 2 rounds to pay for itself. If we were going super long in games, I'd be okay with considering it. We don't really have bounties, so punishing one's not going to be very great. The Mist Hunter is probably useful from a tempo perspective, because both of our guys are bounty hunters, so we could activate the bounty hunter and activate this as well. It's really going to boil down to how often we're like finding ourselves re-rolling or something like that. Deja Vu probably just costs too much for what our removal suite will look like. Canto Bite Security is useful in general. Play against any discard sides or mill. It's quite good. 000 is not terrible as like a straight up card, but I don't think we want to slow ourselves down that much. I'm going to put 1 Streetwise there to see how many events we have that costs. All of our stuff's going to be yellow, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have like Doubt. Once we add like Doubt, Streetwise loses its overall usefulness. If we needed additional vehicles, we could go Merchant Freighter, but I don't think we need. Improvised Defense is a good piece of mitigation. Depending on how stuff goes down, Fickle Mercenary is always like mildly disgusting. I don't think we have the money for Hired Muscle. Hired Muscle just costs too much. Hired Muscle just costs too much over the course of a game. So yeah, our supports are not amazing, but that's fine. And then we're kind of just going gung-ho on the removal. We could do something with like Arm to the Teeth at the end of the game, but I've always hated that. I would need a bunch of small shit to make that worth it. Dangerous Maneuver can be quite good. Of the stuff we have, it's pretty much like armor plating is the only thing that's defensive so far. Bounty Hunter Mask gives us a health, but like we don't count that. I don't think we lose anything by having DM except for Theed. So we do have to question if we want to do that, but I think we're fine. Probably have the doubts because we don't have access to real zeros. We don't have enough pay sides for a price. Hasty is a potential option. Most of these are god awful. If we were trying to get super rampy with stuff, we could no get to me dead. But I just don't think that's kind of in the cards. If we had like rendezvous for hired muscles and stuff, then like Reap into Rendezvous would be like, oh, I got this money. But even then, that's like, oh, I burnt 2 cards, I did shit. Yeah. I'm gonna put a shakedown, but it's because I need to go check my disrupt sides. I know Boba has 1 each. Jango has none. Van Braces has it. I want to say most of the upgrades, or some of the upgrades have 1. The Pulse Cannon has 2. The Pulse Cannon's gonna get eaten anyways, so it's like, oh. Sound the Alarm is a potential option for people focusing. You hate their life. Make them hate their life. Could go Survival Instinct instead of Hasty. I'll put that there so I don't forget about it. I don't like stuff like Take Flight. So there's a lot of people that will run Take Flight, which is kind of fine. The dilemma is you're only getting 2 dice. They have to be yellow. If the odds are low for you to just be super happy with what you got, then like it's just not good enough. You could definitely do it and then like get a kill when you need like 2 damage left. So like there is some value overall in it, but it's real fucking brutal, real brutal. One resource from a non-plot card you control. I don't think we had anything that would get benefit from it. Um, Active Cruelty, somewhat usable. These are not amazing cards. Uh, 100% need like 2 electroshocks. Fight Dirty is that interesting one. If we go see our number of yellow dice is high enough where they're just terrible sides, then Fight Dirty gives you some situations where like Jango rolls out and like 4 or 5 dice come out, and then someone like does something else and you fight dirty and kill their guy when they kind of didn't expect you to be able to do that. If it didn't say melee, I would probably consider just straight up running it. I think we have to run near miss because we're light on removal. We don't have to run 2 of them, but like I can't run flank. So I think a near miss, potentially 2 is reasonable. We're likely to skip Dead or Alive, by the way. Just at least at the beginning. Or if we scale back the deck and we find it's worth having, then we can do it. No scavengers. Rumors is interesting for kind of getting information. I don't know what world I can afford paying that in a non-ramp deck. Most of these are just so awful. Warning shot's interesting. So what is it? It's either free disrupt or it's 1 to remove the die. Your opponent picking is brutal. So we're gonna put the Bacta therapies because we're probably gonna load up on Jango. Um, if we heal 5 with this, then it could help us, especially since we might just make random buttloads of money. If the people go for Boba right away because they're concerned with that, then loading up Jango, we can go and kill stuff and then double back and make life miserable once their damage is decreased. Yeah, entangles for the late game once we're just trying to like stop whatever the hell's going on. You need 5 resources to really do this well, or what? 4 if they're broke. I could probably use this shit in droids, which is weird. But they'd have to be broke, and I'd have to have 4. Getting 4 is easy. Them being broke's the hard part. When we finish this, by the way, we're gonna go into TTS and kind of just fiddle around. We could go crosshairs or something like reversal. I don't see myself doing wanton destruction, and reversal would have to hit like a 3 for it to be worth it. All right, so we at least have the basis here. So we have doubts. We don't have any other zeros. With access to electroshock hitting 2 or less, I think at that point I'd rather have hasty than survival. So we'll make that easy adjustment here. Said we'd look for disrupts. We have 1 disrupt there. We have a disrupt there. 2 disrupts. 1 disrupt. No dis. Oh, this has disrupt as well. And the rest, even the wrist laser has disrupt. So like I think having a shakedown could probably be fine. Fickle has it as well. Mist Hunter has it. Even the Slave 1 has it. So we're gonna run 1, and like if its test is out well, then you could decide to just straight up run 2 if you wanted. I just don't. There's not a ton of space for that. Is there a world where active cruelty works for us? It feels like it doesn't. Maybe it does because like the pokes and shit, but like I feel like it's largely irrelevant. Mist Hunter is much faster activating than Fickle. The other thing is you don't have to worry about people just taking the Fickle. But sometimes like people taking the Fickle is just a really strong spot. We don't have enough cost yellow events to make that worth running. We're probably going to have, what, 14 removal maybe? And all of this is considered removal. So we have to cut 2. I think we have to cut one of the zeros. So it's either Hasty Shakedown or Sound the Alarm. Our opening die roll off is +1 on Jango, even on Boba, so it's 4 1/3. That is not very good. I guess we can go look at battlefields. We can't run Refinery, Refinery is that one that you could run and like ruin people's lives. Because if we don't run DM, we could roll out. We could like Mando a Jango, get the resource, go use it, abandon Refinery, throw it away into like a Slave 1 or Gauntlet Rocket or Pulse Cannon, and then draw a card. And it's like, wow. But then like it's not the same as Chopper, where Chopper gets to pull the die back. Without the die back, it's just much worse. There's the Bounty Hunter one, that you get a resource, the opponent loses a resource. Maybe I consider just running that one to make people hate life. I think I might be okay with this one. It makes us being fast irrelevant. And I try to make the deck so I don't have to reroll as much. Like, none of the 4 character dice do I really need to reroll. Could I? Sure. Do I need to? No. You could also military camp to roll people in, but that shit's terrible. Resource draw could be fine, but I think just the Bounty Hunter one might keep people off of it. If we have a bunch of odds, Rift Valley is also reasonable. We don't have a leader for Salt Flat, so we never want to give that to the opponent. Can't do Theed because we have DM. I don't have the nutsack to run Weta Palace. Not at least without the trooper shit to steal battlefield. I'd hella think about it, but the nutsack's not there, guys. Sorry. There's the reroll resolve one also, but like that's not amazing either. So I think Java Palace probably makes sense. Makes the opponent cry a little bit. Because a 2-resource swing is insane. Alright, what do we got? So I said we have to cut 2 of these. I feel like I want to cut the shakedown. It does only hit 2 or less. And I kind of want that near miss back. Alright, so let's do this. We gotta cut 1 more, and then is there some reason to run? Nah, just the 1 near miss is fine, probably with 2 shocks and 2 risky moves. Alright, we're gonna get rid of the shakedown. Alright, so that's the 4 defense special. We're gonna get rid of the improvised defense. So now we just have to kind of decide the other stuff. So we have our 14 removal. Do we want... Are there any other kind of yellow cards that we just really want access to? The rationale for 14 here, by the way, is because it has like the 12 feeling, right? Of my 40% removal, except DM might just be dead. So DM's my additional 2. And then like a Bacta is a little slow as well. But it should be fine. So like past that, it's whatever's going on. We only technically have 1 here to cut, but we actually have multiple decision trees for what we're doing with resource stuff. The armor plating is actually defensive as well, so we have 15, plus the bounty hunters. So we actually have more than I stated by a pretty far margin. Let's go actually look at the charts and see what we're working with right now. So we have a 4, 6 threes is what? 2 slave ones, 2 gauntlets, and 2 pulses. So let's see what we're working with total. 10 plus 14 is 24, plus 18 is 42, plus 4 is 46. We will add a resource for each card, though. Or each equipment. So Pulse Cannon and Vibro Cutlass don't count, but the other 10 do. So we go from 46 down to 36. And we do get to cut a card. So with 36, it should just be 3.6 if I'm playing 3 cards. Current average is 1.2. We'd like to get that to just straight up 1. But you can't do that without somehow magically removing 6 cost here. And I think it's fine. The wrist laser is probably the worst one. So we'll cut that. Alright, now we have to just decide, do we want to make any adjustments? Like, do we want to have, I don't know, 2 Fickles maybe over the Mist Hunters? Fickle's cheap, it goes in good. Mist Hunter comes in fast, though. It also has, well, they both have the 3s there for the Jango. They both have the 2. Fickle can be taken, though. The discard's viable. It only costs 1, so it's fine. It doesn't have a resource side. I believe in the power Fickle. Is this correct? So 10 plus 12 is 22. Plus another 18, we're at 40, 44. So we're at 34, but one of them is technically a redeploy. Is this the best we can do? I think this is fine. Um, One of the main concerns here is that we start off in a solid spot. So, like, if we have to cast a piece of removal that costs one, we have a total of five of them. Then we have the equivalent to three zeros and a couple twos. And Tangle's the only one that starts off early. So, like, in the first round, we're trying to, what? Play an equipment to get a resource, roll out, do some stuff, maybe get another resource, play something like a slave one. But if we bounty hunter mask, then we could just straight go into gauntlet rocket. And I think that's probably fine. That seems reasonable. If we Z6 jetpack, we have a resource left to do the other stuff. We can re-get off of Jango, then maybe hit a slave one, or hit a fickle late. The main concern is going to be this fickle shit with Jabba's Palace and how that's going to operate. But this is where I would start, and then just kind of see how I feel. If I feel like I need more firepower, then we adjust to give more firepower. I know overall removal hitting us in the face is like awful. Alright, so let's save that, and then we're going to pause. Alright, so switching over to TTS now. The base idea here is to kind of give you guys a feel for what we're looking at, for kind of some, common round one stuff, as well as what we'll be looking at for mulligans. Alright, well, give me 1 second, because I actually have to move where all this shit is. Because I could not see the hands well. Alright. So with this opening where it's like, oh, okay, man, we got the slave one, but then, like, we don't have a 0 or 1 to kind of reliably hit it. We could even do something where we, like, Z6 jetpack into the pulse cannon, but that's much worse. So what I'd be fine with doing here is actually this. Depending on whether we thought we would start with the battlefield and whether they'd give it to us or not is whether we decide to keep hasty. But I'd be fine doing this so that we don't miss the equipment. Okay, and now we hit the equipment we're actually looking for, which is the bounty hunter mask. So then it's like, I was about to say, this is the other Boba, what the hell? So we'd see this hand and kind of like, okay, what's going on? We know that we have no removal, so we have to be very particular about how we're doing things. If we go and we bounty hunter mask straight into a slave one, we'll be able to get the pings right away. But we lose the ability to oh my god, Jesus. We lose the ability to pay for anything, right? So then the opponent doesn't have to be that concerned about removal, because yellow villain doesn't have a ton. If we started with shields, we'd probably go like 1-1, or we could just consider putting both on Boba if we felt that they'd be safe. But like 1-1 would probably be much more reasonable. If you're willing to give up the 1 damage from Slave 1, you could Bounty Hunter Mask, right, to get the 3rd resource, and then just roll out and use him and see if he gets a resource, because it's 55. If you're fine with the 2-for-1 just kind of being dead until you hit another resource, that's another option. So I think I would start with the Bounty Hunter Mask, have them do something, and then just go straight into the Slave 1. The rationale here behind the straight into the Slave 1 is that we'd be content with damage here. We know we don't have removal anyways. If they don't see it, that's fine. And then if we can get resources back on this initial rollout, then we can consider going with like a Van Braces on Boba and then rolling again. If we find another resource somewhere, we can go Fickle. The 2-for-1 is being dead side's rough, but the 1 damage is really nice. So we get that there. We would like hit a guy for 1. It'd be like, oh, okay. We get the resource, play the Van Brace, get another 1. So we'll already have done 2 damage here and feel like much better about it. If we did anything else, we'd be in a much worse position. Then from this, it's like, what do I actually want for sides? And like, we would probably immediately jam a 2 into somebody. If if there were, let's say, two guys and we didn't care which one we killed, we would poke a guy and then probably just do the two indirect. Because if you re-roll this and you find disrupt or blank, you feel terrible. But I think it'd be okay in this current situation with these rolls to re-roll here. And we profited immensely here. So we would have done two indirect. I'd probably go to whatever other guy. We'd get three in, grab a shield, whoever's getting hit, and just go straight into the next round. Van Brace for free. And like now you're in a good position. You have some decent stuff on the board. If we ever need to reroll, the other thing with Van Brace is because you can pick it back up, you can have no cards and then just have enough for an additional reroll, which is really nice. And the Fickle here would kind of situate yourself where you're just doing stuff late. Hit some damage, that's sweet. Like, so that kind of start is just like, yeah. And that's why I was willing to give up the Electroshock. If your opponent can threaten you pretty easily with what they'd have going on, then yeah, like getting rid of the Electroshock could be a mistake. But we already knew that we had access to the Slave one. So even if we just need to, play the upgrade, get a resource, roll out Jango, we might find a resource or two. Or at that point, we'd have to find two resources to make up for it. But we had access to Fickle on the back there. So let's go look at it again. So in this opening, we have the plating. So we could go plating override into Gauntlet Rocket, and we'd be okay with that. We definitely can't keep that. We can't keep the Bacta. Once again, it goes back to, like, do we think our opponent will take our battlefield? And that's where, like, Hasty comes in, right? This is like, if they take ours, then cool, we have removal. So with the way this hand's situated, I'd be fine keeping the Hasty. Even if we just get shields, it's fine. All right. And now it becomes tough again, right? Because we have the stupid Slave one again. Where do we go? We definitely don't want to pitch a Slave one or even the Gauntlet Rocket to reroll. But if we go armor plating into Gauntlet Rocket, we're obviously going to doubt something. If we have the battlefield, Hasty is live. If it's not, so like we'd have to be concerned about finding sides, I guess, and then not being able to reroll. So which way would I do this? I'm trying to think in what situation would I Gauntlet Rocket. Here's the rationale. If the opponent doesn't have disrupt sides, then I can slow the pacing down. I could, let's say, roll out Boba and give up a damage. Let's say I had hit the Slave one, and then do that. If I find a resource, I could actually just straight up Gauntlet Rocket and get a resource back. And then I would actually have all 4 cards in hand and not have to worry myself about playing the plating or not. To have net the 1 resource to fit the Gauntlet Rocket in. And since we wouldn't be playing Slave 1 in that rationale unless we just straight up hit the resource, I'd be fine just rolling Boba here. And like that's the thing that'll kind of mess with you with sequencing, right? Because you might just think, oh, I have to armor plate into the Gauntlet. Or you might just armor plate and do nothing there. But if you realize that the odds of you being able to Slave 1 are just super low, there is another consideration. We could armor plating. Or we could just roll out Jango, technically. We could just straight up roll out Jango and see if we can hit a resource. It's 55%. But I prefer to see if going the Gauntlet Rocket route makes sense. So seeing this here with the resources is like, oh baby. And like that's why the sequencing, and that's why we talk about sequencing so much. And I know I said it like 15 times there, but that's how important it is. Because you can realize that you should be doing something a certain way. And if instead you're like, oh, I got my Gauntlet Rocket, nah. If you now like roll out and you find the +4, and I don't know, you can't either find the ranged or someone eats it, like look at what's left. If we have the battlefield, like okay, if we hasty and doubt something, we can only pitch Slave 1, which is like the best card in our deck. If we don't have the battlefield, like we have 1 reroll on a Gauntlet on a hasty, do you keep a +4 reroll knowing that of these 4 dice, whatever, what the odds are hitting the ranged? Hitting ranged on one of his 2 dice is 55%. So then if we include the 1, you get like another 7. You're at like 63, and then another 6. So you're at like 70% on one reroll to hit it. What if you miss? What if you hit 1, but then the opponent mitigates it? What do you do? And like that's a constant dilemma. Another concern here is like, are we playing against yellow villain with DM, with access to DM? Because then it's like, oh, slave 1's real brutal. When you hit this 2 resources, even then at that point, you have to be like, oh, do I bother even playing the slave 1? And I think the answer is actually no. So I would grab the resources, right? And then just jam the gauntlet rocket. Not even play the plating. You'll have 1 left. It'll threaten having removal. And the odds of hitting the 4 are low. And if you have to ditch a card, it's fine. See that +4? Yeah, this is why. So with this setup, I'd be, if I have the battlefield, I could pitch the plating and not bat an eye, because the hasty is more likely to stop 2 damage or even 1 damage for free. So like we hit the 1 here, but if they have any removal for it, we get punished for it. So even at that point, I'd probably normally roll the gauntlet, but if I felt like I was in a bad position for the match, okay, I hit it, whatever. Then you do stuff like that. And like that's why round 1s are just so important. The sequencing and everything you're doing is matters a lot. Future rounds, it still obviously matters, but not nearly as much as round 1. Threatening to do stuff when you don't have it throughout the course of the game is super duper important. Slave 1 again. Dude, we're a beast. Look at this. We're monsters. Better to be lucky than good, right? But yeah. So, oh, Bounty Hunter Mask. Slave 1. Let's go, you know? Get them pokes in, baby. But yeah, when possible, you want to mulligan kind of hard for the slave 1. Like you would keep a doubt. You'd consider keeping a hasty. You'd keep an equipment. You'd probably dump the rest usually. You're looking for slave 1, gauntlet rocket, or pulse cannon usually. The pulse cannon may not come down on 1, but you might play it late into round 1. So like you might do something where like Jango gets a resource, rolls out, does whatever, and then you throw it on a Boba. Boba will probably get focused down at that point, but you probably get some time, and it'll set you up to find the resource on Jango to get the pulse down. But yeah. All right, you would like kind of feel good about that. So here's the weird thing about Jango's day. You have 2 blinks essentially in this current position. So we are 66% to be at the same or to improve. If you have 2 rerolls, then it's not terrible to reroll it. If you only have 1 reroll, then you have to question whether it's worth it or not. Because it's not just, well, I have, high percentages, but you have high percentages on each die. The problem is you also then have blanks on each die. So we have the equivalent to a disrupt and a blank, or a blank and a second blank via like disrupt if the opponent has nothing, the 2-for-1 on the Jango. So you don't want to lose nearly as many dice to it. So I could see a situation where I just keep that. Yeah, and like the slave 1 missed again because it's a jerk. And like this special is entirely dependent on that being like pseudo useful, right? So we'd have to hope they have hit a 2, but we'll have gotten 1, 2 here, 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, and a couple of resources in the process. We'll have doubted something. Pulse cannon? Nope. Yeah, pulse cannon. So then you're just like, oh shit, you can do stuff, and you can do it slow here. Because you can like Jango come out. Well, you could actually just Boba come out. Boba comes out probably first because you may be threatening somebody. So you'll have got the 7th damage here. You'll see the rolls. Dude, the special comes up like a monster. So here's the concern with going Boba. So like, remember I said we want damage there? The problem is now if we decide that we want to entangle something, we can't pulse cannon. if we had did Django first, there are pretty high odds for the resource. We did hit a resource here, so like that's irrelevant. But they had higher odds for the resource. So if they were going after Django, then yeah, you would consider probably just jamming the pulse cannon, or you'd Boba, do stuff and see if something gets mitigated, and then come in with the pulse on Django. So this one matters more of who's taking damage from you or on your side, um, on where this pulse cannon's going and the order that you're gonna do things. But you're likely to just give up Entangle here to have pulse cannon plus a shock. We do have the other doubt as well, so like it pretty much all irrelevant. Let's see if we can find a shit hand. But in general, if you're not finding terrible hands, um, kind of like ever, it usually means that the deck build was quite good. Solid mix of things. But we were hitting broken shit. Dude, we hit the slave one like it's our job. So if we thought the opponent was a support deck, you'd keep it. I would be fine ditching the rest. You could decide to keep like a near miss or a risky move. Um, for me, it's super important to get the equipment. If we miss the equipment, it's brutal. And we have enough removal where I feel like I'd hit something. Yeah, so we got the near miss back. So, this one kind of gives you that situation again, like how do you want to do things? And what? We could go straight into the Gauntlet Rocket and have one reroll. If we hit the resource, we can slave one. Slave one's actually probably just better. If we hit 2 resources, we can slave one and have the Vambrace. Yeah. So it's like, okay, get to the 3rd resource. Yep. Slave one, and now we just go time on it. The free damage off the slave one just means you're normally looking at 3/3 in ridiculous sides. When you get to do both of them and you're looking at 4 on those first sides, it's like insane. And the thing is like it's not really 4s because one piece of mitigation doesn't bone you. So, you're in that situation where you can just reroll off of the Vambrace. We keep the 1 on the Jango because of the 2 dead sides. Yeah. A lot of time you're just kind of taking what you can get. We don't have a resource available, so the near miss is just straight up dead as well. So like we could take that reroll. But if the disrupt of the discard's relevant, then going forward makes sense as well. The resource situates ourselves next round, for just going straight into Gauntlet Rocket, get like a shield, do 3. That's the thing. Like it's still not the greatest of decks, but at least it'll operate semi-consistently. And that's all you can really ask for sometimes when you're playing this stuff. We're playing a monocolor deck, right? Like, it's not amazing. But Mulligan hard enough, and you'll find Slave 1's free. Jesus Christ. Alright. Let's throw it again. So, in case anyone doesn't know, let me go pull up my quick chart. 1 second. I actually don't know what will show up on my screen when I do this. Holy shit. I can't find my stuff. Alright, let's see if this shows up properly. Chrome. Yeah. So, when you have 2 of a card, if you mull everything, you're 52% to find it. So the base expectation here is that we'd probably have no problem looking at 9 cards. The initial 5 that we get in 4, because we would keep an equipment if we found it. I don't think there's a single equipment we would ditch, including Gauntlet Rocket. So maybe no, even then I would keep the plating. Like getting some value is better than getting no value. So you're 49%. 1 in 2 games you're supposed to see the slave 1 in your opening, provided you're willing to ditch 9 cards, and that's not counting the initial 31%. So you're actually 31%. 3 out of 10 times you'll see slave 1 in the opening 5. And then from there, by ditching cards, you increase your percentage to 49. But essentially, you're taking a 3 out of 10 twice, and that's how you get to that. That's how you get to 52%. But yeah, I don't know. I hope this was useful to you guys overall, enjoyable. The real question is going to be kind of like how the deck operates versus other things you're expecting to play against. Where the hell's my Chrome? So, I don't know. I hope You guys enjoy it, play it, like it, but you probably can see a little bit of why I'm not a big fan of the other boba. Like, how few cards did we have in our open to kind of like do what we wanted to, right? So that's where other boba just kind of becomes shittier. If we felt that we wanted more modified sides, so if I wanted hidden blaster, um, I don't know, Dunderbuss pistol, which I don't want any part of those, um, then you could run the other boba and just have a plot. You can go double down, right? So like, hold on, let's pull Chrome back up. Uh, so if you had double down, you get 3 slave ones. You increase your odds to 67.9% if you're willing to dump the whole hand. If not, 64. It's close enough where I'm comfortable calling that 2 out of 3 times. 2 out of 3 games, you would start with the slave one. How you're going to get at that in play, whole other story. But 2 out of 3 times, roughly, you're starting with slave one. So if you wanted to run the other boba and double down, you could definitely do that, and then have the one base range side to go with like the gauntlet rocket. But as soon as you start putting bounties in there, you're removing your removal. Um, you're starting to make things much worse for you overall as far as like staying alive. And the important part there is if you're hitting slave one, if you can keep both guys alive, you're gonna be good to go. Like even if you don't play another big or a big upgrade at that point, you're gonna be in a smooth position. Um, I could consider running just straight up dead or alives for something like that, and just no other bounties, and be okay. If you felt like you really really wanted to, like that's when people start going to like Night Sister Lair plus bounty, and then like their hands are piles of shit because you're gonna like play a bounty, play an equipment. What if you get a slave one now? You have 2 cards left. You can't re-roll well. Your mitigation options are limited. What the hell do you do? And like that's the primary concern with most of those other setups of lists is that they're focusing on too many things. We're already focusing on equipments. So then if I'm holding a bounty just in case I get my battlefield, and then I'm looking for an equipment, but I'm also looking for slave one, but I want removal. Like you just can't mulligan nearly as effectively as when you're just looking for very particular cards and you have a bunch of options to hit and like be content with. But that's that. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and let me know your thoughts. Have a good one. Deuces.